Now, this morning, we are fortunate to be joined by our Go Negosyo big brothers and private sector partners in MSME development to learn from their entrepreneurial journey and programs that they've been doing to help MSMEs who've been badly affected by the COVID-19 crisis. Now, before we go straight to the forum, we'd first like to recognize the following partners who made this segment possible. ICTSI, Ayala Corporation, I like that ring, BPI Banco, SM Investments Corporation, and BDO Unibank. I'm really privileged and honored to be doing this panel, as I think the speakers that we have this morning, essentially, they are the guiding lights, so to speak, when it comes to the private sector on where the economy is going and how it can recover this 2021. So I'd like to start first by introducing our first panelist, Jaime Augusto Zobel de Ayala, Chairman and CEO of Ayala Corporation.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
Good morning, Jaime. Enrique Razon, Chairman and CEO of International Container Terminal Services, Inc., or ICTSI. Good morning, Ricky.
Morning.
And my neighbor, Tessie C. Coson, Vice Chair of SM Investments, Inc.
Hello.
Morning, Tessie. And
Morning.
Tony Fernandez, the Group CEO of Air Asia.
Morning, everyone. Morning, Karen.
It's nice to see you again, Tony. The last time I spoke with you was, I think, in Indonesia for the World Economic Forum. At least that was IRL, or as the millennials call it, in real life. So let's start first with the goal of this forum. The goal of this forum is clearly how big business is supporting MSMEs. We know that 99.6% of local business establishments in the Philippines are MSMEs. That's almost 1.5 million companies in the Philippines. So I'd like Jaime to start the ball rolling. All companies of all sizes have been affected by the pandemic. Jaime, what is Ayala doing to pivot in order to maintain the stability first of your business? And how is Ayala adding MSMEs into the value chain so that there's growth in all aspects, not just big business, but also these 1.5 million small companies?
Thank you very much, Karen, and thank you again. First and foremost, a big congratulations to Go Negosyo on this 15th anniversary. It's been an extraordinary growth, Joey, to your leadership and the way the Go Negosyo community has been an encouragement to MSMEs. It was also fabulous to see Anthony and Dado, two good friends before, and of course to be here with Tony, who I haven't seen in a while, Tessie and Ricky. So just a great gathering, and congratulations to Go Negosyo for making this happen. Karen, to your question, the MSME community, which of course Go Negosyo celebrates and helps, is a major driving force in our country. About 90%, I guess, of our economy is driven by this community in one way or another. And this pandemic has been unprecedented. It's all of us, even the larger institutions, have been caught in a situation where pretty much all business ground to a halt, I guess, in the first quarter of the year, and now we've all been picking up. But we're great believers, as I think my colleagues here, Tony, Tessie, and Ricky, are great believers in understanding that we're part of an ecosystem. And to a certain extent, that ecosystem has to stay alive at a time like this. So from our point of view, Karen, before you can pivot, we have to make sure, first and foremost, that our employee force felt safe and felt healthy. I remember talking with Ricky at great length in the early days of this pandemic, how much we had to all invest in the private sector in the whole testing side of the equation. And I think both of us were of the same mindset. We discussed this also with Tessie at great length. And we all worked together to just put a focus, I guess, on the employee side before we could act and do anything else. After that, it's about the ecosystem that surrounds us. The capitalist system is a system that relies on multiple groups coming together and helping each other. I've seen how Tessie has gone out to try to help her ecosystem as well and keep that alive. I know Ricky has been doing it nonstop. Tony, I've seen less of, but Tony is by nature a great convener and always helping others. I don't think I can think of a single time where I haven't called Tony and he hasn't been of help. Bottom line, this is a time for all of us to work hand in hand. So first we keep our employees safe and make sure that they're financially safe and safe from a health point of view. And then we move on to help the broader ecosystem around us. The rest on the pivoting side is a longer story, but I don't want to take up the whole story. Happy to come back to it and talk about that part afterwards. Thank you. Thank you, Karen.
All right, thank you so much, Jaime. And to our panelists, I'd like to advise that if you're not speaking, please turn off your mics, or from our studio, make sure that the microphones are off. I'll go first with Ricky. Ricky, perhaps you can take off from where Jaime just started the conversation rolling. In an earlier interview, Ricky, you wrote off 2020 essentially, right? When the pandemic started. Do you still have that point of view after seeing where we're going at the end of the year and where the government is essentially moving towards for 2021?
First of all, congratulations to Go Negosyo. They play an important role in the economy. And without SMEs, there wouldn't be any big business. You know, they're the bedrock of any successful economy. Provide most of the employment. They are really the market provide the market for the bigger businesses. 2020 is almost over and it has been written off. I think it's been a horrible year. I was born year of the rat, which is the year now. And if you notice, a lot of the big crises are always happen in the year of the rat.
Okay.
2008 financial crisis was the year of the rat. And in 2019, I was warning all my friends and saying, year of the rat's coming, so watch out. Well, even I didn't expect this this type of crisis. And the key to, I guess, this year is either survival and opportunity.
Yeah.
For some, you have to make sure you survive the crisis before you can help others. And for others, the crisis is a great opportunity. I mean, that's the way these things work. And on our part, we've been through several large crises. I think most people were caught flat-footed in the Asian crisis, much better prepared for the 2008 crisis. This one was a complete, I think this one eclipsed both, no? And your question on 2020, I think 2020 is absolutely written off. And I expect the situation won't stabilize till the end of 2021. And 2022 is the year I expect where people will recover and you will see a lot of pent-up demand in the world. And being locked down for the last 8-9 months, I did a lot of research on pandemics going back to the 14th century, the Black Death, the plague, Russian flu, the Spanish flu, the Hong Kong flu, this one now, and they all seem to last 2 years. So that is my expectation. The difference now is we have the technology and developing a vaccine rather quickly. So you just have to make sure your business survives until the world can get back to normal.
Yeah.
I've started hating the word new normal already, so I don't use it.
Okay. Now,
normal, not normal, or
Okay, just quickly, Ricky, to relate it to the MSMEs, your main businesses, we're talking about ports and, of course, leisure. How have you included or ensured that the MSMEs included in the value chain of your businesses remain alive? I mean, clearly, your big business, you have enough cash to stay afloat, but what about the MSMEs that are tied to the ports and essentially Soler?
Well, what we've done is, because we're all we normally do business with bigger companies. I think we're all in that same boat. So what we're doing is trying to do more business with smaller companies. The bigger companies will survive. So, we have to, wherever we can, is to give business to small companies and medium-sized companies. And that's the way that's the only way we can contribute to the SMEs. But key to our own survival, even globally, is the survival of the small businesses. Many have not survived. I think hundreds of thousands all over the world have gone under. But then again, you have tens of thousands of new businesses, and this is the evolution of this type of crisis.
Okay, so I'll come back to you, Ricky. Moving now to Tessie. Tessie, SM has thousands of MSMEs under its belt. Are
Yes.
you okay? So Tessie, SM has thousands of MSMEs under its belt, and earlier on at the start of the lockdown, SM was quite aggressive, and Ayala as well, in ensuring that rents, for example, was something that that small businesses could afford. Clearly, retail companies have made sure that it would be affordable for small businesses not to close shop. What else has SM been doing so far to ensure that you can still keep these MSMEs alive? Let's take it to what Ricky said, till 2022.
Yeah, we are a community of MSME. As you can see in our malls and in our retail business, we do deal with a lot of MSME, and it came as a shock to us that everything has to be on a standstill. So what we do is to continue to provide a market for the MSME. We have the physical, and we tried also the digital. So I guess we are working together to and we're making progress. And so learning from the experience this year, I think we will have a better plan next year on how we can make things a bit more steady when crisis comes in. We are like Ayala of Jaime. We take care of our people first, and then making sure that they are financially okay, and as well as health-wise okay. We also check them very, very often, and then we are there very early, so that early in the before the lockdown is ended, some of us were already working in order to engage our customers so that they know that we're there, whether in the banking area or in the retail area. And also after that, we also look inward to see how we can survive this crisis. So far, we have been working together with the MSME in different aspects, and I think we're making progress. So, and things seems to be going up positively. So I hope it will continue going upward as we go through the years, through the weeks. As far as 2021 is concerned, I think it's going to be better than this year. 2022, I hope there's no other new virus, and if there is none, I think we'll be okay. All of us here with our family of MSME will be okay.
All right, just very quickly, the part of the first question is, what are you doing to pivot in order to maintain the stability of your business? And both you and Ayala, essentially, and Jaime can catch on this later, you're a brick and mortar, you depend on foot traffic. Filipinos aren't spending that much. There's a contraction in terms of growth. How are you innovating somewhat? Do you think people will shop the same? Are you pivoting already now?
Yeah, we are looking into the digital aspect, to how to serve the customer in an omni-channel environment. We're getting there, but not yet really the ideal situations. but we're getting there. So that's why on 2021 we will be better in a better position. But somehow, even with all the digital shopping and digital commerce, there are a lot of people who just wants to get up, and we provide that fun. So slowly they're getting confidence to come out. We put all of the safety measures required in the mall, and we really check on them and clean them at night. So to make sure that not only our customers are safe, our own team or employees are safe as well, so that they can engage the customer better. So we're putting all of those engagement, those safety measures, and in the community we do help also whatever we can do to maintain the community safety measures.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tessie. Now, moving on to tourism. Tony Fernandez. Tony, good morning to you. Tourism all over the world was either, I'd have to say, top 3 or top 2 of the hardest hit sectors because of COVID. You've seen airlines, Tony, all over the world that have been declaring bankruptcy. And strangely, it's nice to note that AirAsia is quite upbeat about ASEAN recovery. You're a low-cost airline, but it seems that you believe that, your third quarter, your operating statistics already showed improvements, and for 2021, you're seeing an uptrend for AirAsia. Are there any changes you've had to make, and how did you survive 2020 considering tourism was dead?
Well, morning everyone, and nice to see you, Karen, and Ricky and Jaime and Tessie. It'd be nice to see you in the flesh. And congratulations to Go Negocio. I know it's an SME conference. After 2020, I feel like I'm back as an SME anyway. So this conference is pretty relevant for me. I think the great thing is survival first. We've survived. And I think the first message I want to give everyone is let's focus on the positive and not focus on the negative. If we sit there and cry and blame everything, then we're on to a losing wicket anyway. So we've been very positive in AirAsia. We had to restructure our business, pivot, which I'm sure is a question later on. We're very much an SME company. Everyone who flies with us is basically an SME. We've been supporting the SMEs for the last 19 years, and I think that's bode us well, enabling us to pivot the business into this digital world, which we're trying to do. We're seeing, as Tessie mentioned, people want to get out. We can't live in a cave for the rest of our lives. We've lived through many, many viruses and many, many illnesses, and we've just got to, at some point, learn to live with this virus. As Ricky said, there is therapeutics, there's vaccines coming, but look, this virus isn't going to go away anytime soon, just like others, common cold, dengue, AIDS, etc. But we have to learn to live with it. And we're seeing a huge amount of demand coming out as borders open and as domestic travel opens, and that's a good sign. I think we're in a nicer part of the business in terms of airlines, in that domestic and regional travel will probably bounce back, and we're very much an ASEAN airline. We were just on this massive kind of growth of the Philippines, which I think, I'm not just saying this because I'm talking to mostly Filipinos. It is one of the most amazing countries, amazing people, beautiful people, but so many people didn't know about it. And we were just on that growth. But, like Ricky said, where there's a crisis, there's an opportunity. And we feel this is a great chance to restructure, re-energize, and come back stronger. And I believe 2021, like Tessie said, will be a much, much better year. It can't be much worse, to be honest, than 2020. And I'm anticipating by June, things will begin to normalize. And by 2022, as Ricky said, I think 2 years is about right. We'll start to see normal behavior coming out. But it's about survival now. It's about being positive. It's about restructuring your business. It's about cash. It's about helping within an ecosystem from both sides. I think both big companies and small companies can benefit from each other. And it's about repivoting. And that's what we've been doing as we've been trying to change ourselves from an airline into more a Grab. So there's Anthony Tan and there's Tony here.
But how do you do that? Tony, Grab doesn't own any car. You own the airline.
Yeah, so Grab still has to move goods. And, you can't move goods electronically. You still need physical. And so our planes come in very useful as we move into this digital world. And we think we can create a nice little ASEAN market for financial services, for food, and for e-commerce, because we have a very, very strong logistics platform. We fly to 156 cities. We've also developed last mile. And so, we're kind of Amazon in reverse. If we talk to Jeff Bezos, he wants to buy an airline now. We have an airline. And so we have something that's also very, very powerful, data.
So is he buying your airline?
No, he hasn't made an offer. I'm waiting for Jaime to buy it. Or Tessie. They can buy it with their credit cards right now. But I think we're going to carve ourselves a little nice market on this digital world. And for me, as Tessie said, it's about looking after my staff. We've been the hardest hit of any of the panelists here. The saddest thing is people have lost their jobs when they did nothing wrong. And so for me, I've got to reskill, retrain, and rehire them. And that's what's driving me. That's what's keeping me alive and positive, is that I have 24,000 amazing staff who have done amazing things for this airline. We started with 2 planes. We grew to 245. We're back to 2 planes. It's like that snakes and ladders game, You get all the way up to square 97, and then the snake brings you down to 3. But we stay positive because we got amazing people, and we'll bounce back stronger. Plus, we'll have this digital and very strong logistics business. Just want to add one thing for SMEs. I think it's very important in ASEAN that there's enough capital. ASEAN people are natural entrepreneurs, but the disadvantage we have versus the States and Europe is access to capital. And in this digital world, I urge the banking community, I urge financial people to look at new models, to find ways of getting capital to many of the people who are listening to this panel. Entrepreneurs can change and will change ASEAN and will continue to drive the economy, but we need to find new methods of getting them capital.
Well said. I like that. I'm going to tackle on that later, on how big banks can actually help entrepreneurs have more capital and more access to capital, because that was actually the essence of Bayanihan 1 and 2 as well. But I'll go back to Jaime on opportunity in the time of crisis. And Jaime, perhaps you can take off also from what Tessie said earlier. Just recently, Ayala Corp, you mustered a comeback on the 3rd quarter. Like many businesses, profits are down for the year 2020. But Jaime, you are involved in so many businesses. Ayala Corp, you're talking about real estate, banking. There's also retail. You've got into digital recently. You're also in power, telecom. Let's go first to the MSME roles in all of the businesses that you are in, and how Ayala Corp ensures their survival so that they remain in the value chain. Your mic, yes.
Thanks very much, Karen. Let me just say, I love the way Tony thinks. Number one, I like his sense of humor. He never loses it. We invited Tony to, on one occasion, to speak to the Ayala Group about crisis management, because his industry has been one of the hardest hit. But what I love about Tony is his sense of optimism always, and his sense of purpose moving forward. It's always a pleasure, Tony, to see your upbeat mood. I'd like to maybe just take off from Tessie. Tessie said basically that the consumer is changing. Ricky as well did it. There's nothing you can do about that. There are 2 parts of the equation, Karen, which is basically the supply side of the economy and the demand side. The supply side is beginning to open up as people feel safer. People are beginning to be able to travel again. People are beginning to move again. The demand side is the one that will start the process of goods and services being purchased again. It's the other side of the equation. To a certain extent, from our point of view, we have about 250,000 MSMEs that surround the Ayala Group one way or another. What we did as a start, Karen, is put them together into a community. We call it the Ayala Enterprise Center. And we brought them in together as a way of convening them and starting a dialogue with them to understand their pain points. Essentially, they have three pain points that we've noticed. I think it was Tony who said the first one, maybe, which is financing. That's going to be an issue, or you said it, Karen, yourself. The second one is, of course, the health side. Those two components, and then finally help in digitizing, I guess, their infrastructure and their businesses. At the Ayala Enterprise Center, it's our way of convening them as a community, starting a dialogue with them, and starting to see, how we can be of help to them. At the very beginning, of course, there was no revenue coming in. So, like Tessie said, together, we basically just condoned rentals on that front, but also at the banking level, all of us gave up on interest payments and the like, just to let the ecosystem rest. None of us could do anything about a consumption that had driven to zero. Now it's about all of us recognizing that the ecosystem is important, Karen, and that we all have to help each other. This is a moment where we all should be holding hands and writing this together. It doesn't matter if you're someone of Ricky or Tessie or Tony's size or a medium-sized industry. We're all part of a system that's increasingly integrated. So from our point of view, we're doing what we can through the Ayala Enterprise Circle to recognize the pain points that they have and start a dialogue in beginning to address it in our own small way. Go Negosyo, of course, does exactly the same thing. So in our case, we're working with our banking community to address the financing needs as much as we can. Our monetary authorities have created quite a bit of liquidity in the system, which has been great, and that's been very helpful to us. But we also have a sub-bank, Banco. I think Tessie has a similar vehicle, and that's dealing really with micro-entrepreneurs. And it's an area that we've been growing for many years now, not just at this time of panic. And that group really needs a lot of support now and is growing tremendously, and we're trying to see what support we can give from that area. Our health group, relatively new group in the Ayala Group, have never been as busy in their lives. They're trying to set up protocols and policies and ways of allowing at least our community of MSMEs to access advice from doctors and medicine and the like at rates that would be lower than elsewhere. So we're trying to handle those two components of that community. And finally, hopefully address the business side and see where we can work hand in hand to start growing them up as our own businesses grow up, but recognize exactly their pain points. So there's been a lot of dialogue at this point in time, a lot of trying to feel what they feel. But I'd like to go back to what Tessie said at the beginning, that the consumer is also changing. All of us have to listen now carefully. We're using our analytics group to understand how that consumer is changing and see if we can get our MSME community to be aligned to the way they're changing. There's no doubt in my mind, as many of our speakers have said, that there's going to be a bricks and mortars play. People will want to convene again, and the vaccine will be appearing. But I am of Ricky's school completely. We'll have to basically learn to live in the way that we're living right now for a little while yet. It'll be a while before vaccines will be available to the rest of the population. It's just a reality. And in that time, the consumption will change. People will get things delivered in a different way. So we're putting a renewed emphasis and investment in logistics, in the e-commerce platforms, and also trying to bring our MSME community and port them into those platforms in any way that we can as well. That having been said, at some point, I am an optimist always, that the world will revert back at some point to mean. Maybe habits will change and we will have two worlds, an online world and a bricks and mortars world. Both will be as important as each other, and we as businesses will have to learn within those, we'll have to learn to live effectively within those two worlds. Thanks,
Okay,
Karen.
just very quickly, before I go on to Ricky, I'll ask Ricky a big picture scenario. But on access to capital, I'd want Jaime and Tessie to take this because of BPI and BDO. There's been a lot of, it's been discussed by several officials in the past that they'd wish that private banks would set aside or have a bigger portfolio for MSME loans. And the reason Bayanihan 2, they set aside 50 billion and put it into the Development Bank of the Philippines was because there weren't enough loans given by private banks to MSMEs. Now, BPI and BDO being two of the biggest banks in the country, what would you need to see? What assurance would you want to overcome this hindrance of granting out more loans to MSMEs? Just very quickly, because clearly the fact that there was 50 billion set for Bayanihan 2 means private banks in general were not loaning or lending enough. So Tessie quickly first, and then Jaime on bank loans before I go to Ricky.
No, it's not. I mean, I think this has been some gap, a communication gap in this. Both Jaime and us, we are about in the same business in dealing with the MSME. We have the mall, we have the retail, and we have properties, and also we have banks that handle different type of loans. So the banks are, both banks, I would say, in behalf of Jaime, were both very active in the lending side. We had, of course, listened to the Bayanihan 1 and 2, and also in terms of the micro, we both have they have Banco and we have the BDO Network Bank. Both banks are very active in dealings with loans for MSME. So I think there's just been some communication gap. But all of us here have been taking care of our own ecosystem to make sure that the activities continues even in this pandemic time. And I think also among us in the businesses, we also work with each other, and we all coordinate that so that we can really we can really make progress in the private sectors when it comes to what to do in the pandemic time. So there has been a lot of coordination and engagement. So I think maybe it's just communication gap.
All right. I'm curious, Tessie, offhand, would you know how much of BDO's portfolio is lent to MSMEs?
Yeah, it's about 20%.
20%. And you feel 20% is enough for the safety of the bank as well, or do you believe it should lend more?
It's growing. The 20% is already maybe 20,000. I guess it's a 20,000 lenders or more. I'm not good at numbers. So, but
you're not good at numbers. Okay. I think that's everyone is smiling with I'm not good at numbers, but go on quickly. Yes. All right. So 20% of BDO's portfolio.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. That's a good one, Tessie. Jaime, quickly, is BPI, how much of BPI's portfolio is with MSMEs?
All I can say to start with, Karen, is that Tessie is much better at numbers than I am. I can assure you that.
or the whole room, frankly. Okay.
No, very, very quickly. I think Tessie said it right. First and foremost, Karen, you've got to understand, business is down. I mean, everything has come down. There was no movement on the demand side for many, many months. People were held up at home. Loans do not grow at a time of no growth. And our country, like many others, has slowed down. When growth slows down, loans slow down. There's a logic to that. Now, that having been said, both Tessie's institution, ours, and many others have basically stopped, in many cases, and given a moratorium on interest rate payments to a certain extent, credit cards and loans and the like. There was an agreement among all the financial institutions to do that. That, I would think, Karen, is a massive help. And Tessie and I have been in exactly the same boat on that front. So, number one, when you don't have growth, you're not going to get loan growth. So it's really very important we get growth going again. And as I mentioned, there's the supply side and the demand side. And the demand side's dry. People's wallets have been used for their needs, for their health needs, to keep themselves safe, to ride out people who don't have work. And that's going to take a little while to come up. And plus, we still have a health issue over us. Now, that having been said, within a scenario where there has been no growth, basically, we have also tried as much as we can to slow down any part of the banking system, which puts pain, I guess, on the MSME sector and larger institutions. All financial institutions have been part of this, Tessie, as much as we have. I
Okay.
think there's been a good commitment to holding hands in this process as we move on now. That having been said, I think the monetary authorities have been doing whatever they can, and I agree, in creating liquidity in the system. And as that growth begins to move out, I have absolutely no doubt that whether it's Tessie at BDO or whether it's us at BPI or whether it's Banco, we will be more than delighted to be helpful in a process of growth that begins to take place again. And right now, it's about keeping and taking care of people's liquidity needs, making sure that they can stay solvent. And I think all of us are doing that as much as possible. But the reality, though, Karen, is that until there is growth in the economy again, it's really very hard to expand the loan portfolio aggressively. I mean, the two things really go hand in hand.
Yeah, but I want to thank you for being very forthright on that, Jaime. I want to thank you on that. So I'll ask Ricky now. This is a big picture question for Ricky on the country. The Philippines was one of the region's most promising economies. Now the IMF projects it to suffer its deepest growth decline. Some are saying the Philippines could end up as Asia's worst economic performer for the year. Your thoughts on that, Ricky, and what would you want to see the government do so that the Philippines would perform better in Asia, even for 2021? There's been a lot of criticism on the government's tepid fiscal and monetary response. The budget's being deliberated right now, Ricky. So clearly the private sector, you know what your roles are, but what is the government's role in all this as well?
Well, it was very clear to me from the beginning of this that the Philippines will be the hardest hit because we're the largest consumer economy. The pandemic specifically attacks the consumer. People have to stay home. Other countries that surround us are larger manufacturing size, while we have, and this is what kept us relatively whole in the 2008 financial crisis. But we will also benefit from the pent-up demand when this whole thing is over. You never hear it mentioned, but what hasn't happened in this pandemic, this crisis, is the global financial system and the equity markets have not collapsed. They remain highly liquid. And as you notice, when crisis like this hits, you have this huge sucking sound of liquidity being sucked out of emerging markets going to safe havens. At the other end of this, because the West, the more developed world, will have slower growth than emerging markets when this is over, you'll have that liquidity starting to come back here to emerging markets. That's why I say, everybody who asks, I tell them, you survive 2020 and 2021, you will be doing very well and it just so happens it's the same as the Spanish flu. 1922 was the hottest growth year of that century, 21, 22, 23. Actually, it got so overheated that it led to the Great Depression when the United States financial system in Europe melted down.
Yeah.
So you have evidence of these things happening. But we just have to sacrifice and wait it out till our time comes back, and it will come back. Everything is a cycle. And if Tessie is not good in numbers, then none of us are good at anything.
Yeah. Okay. Now, just very quickly, just
Why
very,
is it you never get a bank loan when you need it?
very quickly. Well, I think that MSE bank loan question was a good one for many of the MSMEs listening. But quickly, Ricky, before I move to Tony, the forecast, and I want to know if you agree because you've been very vocal in several other.
To answer your question about the Philippine government.
Yes, please do.
To stabilize the country and to get out, the government will have to spend or in stimulus at least 20% of GDP, is my opinion.
20% of GDP.
Support SMEs, provide liquidity in all forms. Whether the central bank has to follow the footsteps of the Federal Reserve and the ECB and start printing a little bit, because we have leeway, we have enough headroom to be able to print some money. And I've been telling Secretary Sonny Dominguez, and he agrees with me, except he has to grapple with the whole bureaucratic system to execute things like this. But I think 20 to 25% of GDP is what is necessary for a consumption-based economy.
All right. No, that's quite. I'm happy you said that. Just for all our panelists, the IMF forecast is more than doubled its initial estimate of a 3.6 year-on-year contraction last June. They're reading between 2019 to 2025, the Philippines is expected to suffer a 13% decline. So this is a report that I have. So Ricky, you're saying that the only way right now to do it really...
Also, they're always revising their forecast. More often than not, they get it wrong.
Okay, so more often than not, the IMF gets it wrong, but...
They revise their forecast to look like they knew what they were talking about to begin with, but they rarely do, in my opinion. Huh?
Okay, all right. But clearly, you just believe that the government needs to pump prime the economy with more funding. That's one thing clear.
Absolutely, whether it's infrastructure, whether it's loans, whether it's liquidity. I mean, we need a bazooka, not a pistol in this.
Okay, I like that. We need a bazooka, not a pistol, quotable quotes. Tony, how would you bazooka tourism? Right now, in the Philippines, it's quite interesting. We have the travel bubble. I find it brilliant. So I'm going to travel bubble to El Nido this Christmas, right? It's a brilliant concept. But how would you bazooka to revive the tourism industry? Mike, Tony, yes.
Just like Tessie's not good with numbers, I'm not good with mics. Bazooka, I do like that word. Ricky likes to bazooka many things anyway. But we believe, number one, the demand is there. I think that's the most important thing. So what we have to do is more green bubbles, more green channels. I'm hoping for better testing. I think that's key. If we can get, I know the Singaporeans and MIT are working on testing where if you can just breathe into a cylinder, within 30 seconds, you know whether you have COVID. Now that is a bazooka moment, because then a lot of life can return to normal. While we're all talking about vaccines is going to take a long time. To distribute, to have an effect on the community, I think testing is where I'm really optimistic on. And therapeutics. There hasn't been a lot of talk about, how did Trump recover fairly quickly? There's a lot of talk about the antibody treatment that he received. So while everyone's focused on vaccine, I think testing is very important. And I think there's going to be some big steps in testing. And two is therapeutics. But governments have to be a little bit braver in opening up the economies. I mean, if you think about it, Malaysia now, we're having a little bit of a foreign worker and prisoner spike, but in the community, we're like 200-300 a day. And that came after an election. Philippines is 1,002, 1,003, sometimes 2,000. But I mean, put that as a percentage of the total population. And so we really do have to focus on public health for sure, focus on testing, focus on being careful. But I think we have to move on. And I think one of my thoughts, I mean, if you look at Singapore, Hong Kong, there was a spike of 20 cases and suddenly that bubble is closed for another 2 weeks. I think that's an overreaction. And I think
really,
politicians and governments need to balance between the economy and health concerns. we as people have to be much more careful on public health and be a lot more resilient. And I think public health is one area where we can all contribute on top of vaccines, therapeutics, and testing. We ourselves, in terms of social distancing and gatherings, etc., can make a big difference. So I think my bazooka moment is testing, and I also hope governments can stop being so conservative in their outlook, because this isn't going to go away, and we're going to have to live with it, and we're going to have to find a balance between health and economy.
All right. Yeah, well, thanks for that, Tony. So yours is you'd really want a balance between reopening the economy and health, and you wish all governments, this is generally speaking, wouldn't be as conservative. Jaime, can you take that on? In terms of reopening the economy, you're seeing the numbers right now, predictions for 2021. How would you like to see the government, and I'm talking about general, this doesn't pertain to just one government, behave in terms of reopening the economy? Tony said he'd like to see governments less conservative. What about you?
Yeah, well, in principle, Karen, I agree with both what Ricky and Tony have said. All of us have a role. So the most important thing is to understand both the private sector and the public sector have roles. Before we get to the demand side, I think both of on the health side, we in the private sector and the government on the public sector both have to work hand in hand to first and foremost make sure people have a way to stay healthy. The health of everyone has become of paramount importance. It's hard to drive any economy until that is there. So we've had a big impetus on the testing side, and there's been a great deal of work with the private and the public sector doing this together. We still have to do, frankly, a lot more together. Then you move on to the vaccine side. We've got to find a medium to long-term solution to be able to get access to vaccines. The Philippines is probably not in the highest rank because we don't have research facilities and we're not producing the vaccine ourselves. So using our influence and as our community, and the fact that we have 100 million people or more, will make us potentially an important community. So that's the next order of the day. So the health side is where we start to work hard to build confidence in the future if people don't see light at the end of the tunnel with respect to their personal health. Moving on to the economy itself, I say the same thing, Karen. The private and the public sector have to work together. All of us in the private sector have been using our balance sheets, the reserves we have, to start doing whatever we can. Number one, to protect our employees, and number two, to protect the ecosystem. I think everyone here has talked about that. We're using our balance sheets, which are not naturally made up for that, but we're depleting our resources on purpose to be able to ride this out. Ricky said it, this is a marathon. On the government side, I agree with Ricky. This is the time where they also have to work hand in hand with us, and they have been doing it. You can see it. They've been putting stimulus on the table in whatever way they can. But as I said at the beginning, demand has to kick in again. Supply is there, demand has to kick in. Ricky gave some numbers with respect to percentage of GDP that has to be stimulated. That's always a point of discussion with any government. But I do believe, and I think I'm on Ricky's side on this, and I think on Tony's as well, that all of us have to use our balance sheets now to kickstart an economy again. What the number is always a point of debate. There are many pluses and minuses one way or another, but that we all have to use our balance sheets to stimulate is a fact. I mean, there is no way around it. This has been a drought, and we have to stimulate demand again. Ricky, I think, is an astute observer of global economics. And to a certain extent, he's pushing, I think correctly, that the balance sheet of the country has to be used to stimulate. I think I would agree with that. What the number is a bigger issue. But all of us, private and public, have to use our balance sheets right now to help and to stimulate. The economy it's like an engine. You know, you put a little bit of gasoline in, you put a little bit of oil, you start it again, it starts sputtering. But all of us have to keep adding the gasoline and all the rest until that engine starts again. And I think the demand side is where the problem is right now. And all of us have to do our share. Thanks, Karen.
Now, yes, go ahead. Before Tony, did you want to?
Really quickly, sorry for interrupting, but I think one other area that governments and private companies need to focus is productivity. I think this is a great opportunity to re-strategize and re-look at supply chains, etc. I want to talk about farmers, for instance. I've been looking at that for the last 18 months. in the Philippines, in Indonesia, in Malaysia, and Thailand, and seeing how our logistics chains can help farmers. Food security is really critical. If you think farmers' income is really very small in relation to the effort that they put in, and there's so much lost in the logistics supply channel, and businesses are overpaying for food and consumers are overpaying. So we have created something called Our Farm, which is a marketplace to help the common farmer bring tech to the farms and to increase the income. Farmers generally are making 10%, and we're trying to double that income. We've launched in Malaysia very successfully, and we're about to launch in the rest of ASEAN, and reduce the cost for businesses. So I think governments and private industry should be looking at how can we, it's not just the top line, how can we increase the bottom line by increased productivity, by using technology, by reducing bureaucracy. There's a huge amount of bureaucracy in ASEAN. And I think governments should not only just be talking about fiscal stimulus, but should be looking at how to reduce the cost of business, both for big companies and small companies, and improving productivity in ASEAN. I think that's something that's being missed out. And as we keep looking at how to use the assets within AirAsia to help the small man on the street, we begin to see huge inefficiencies in the economy caused by bureaucracy, caused by archaic supply chains.
Yes.
And farmers is one example of many that we've uncovered in AirAsia.
Yes. Okay. I'll go back to that, Tony, because after the 3 storms that the Philippines had just experienced, agriculture took such a big blow in the last quarter of 2020 in the Philippines. But I'll go back to that thought, just to balance first, Tessie, your reaction on health and reopening the economy. Tony earlier said that he wishes governments weren't as conservative in a way as they are now. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's true. There should be a lot of work on the working together between the private and the public sector. We look up to Ricky to tell the government what our sentiments are. I guess he knows what we need, and I just hope that the government will understand the things the things that we're hoping for us in the private sector, like Jaime and the other people who are in the same type of business and similar, in the business sector. We're all doing what we can in our own ecosystem. But we need the government to understand what we need. And we do need to open up the logistic. It's not because Tony's here, but there are many areas which we need to open up so that there is a freer flow of people. And of course, we do look into the testing. We also look into the other safety measures like the face mask. Face mask will be with us for quite some time. Even with the testing, even with the vaccine. But please understand that I just hope the government understands that we need to open up the commuting from one area to another, and also including also foreign businesses, whether it is in terms of investment or in terms of tourism. I think. And also, Ricky was talking about focusing a lot on this sector. The government supporting a lot. Focus more on this sector. And I think that would be a good way to look at things. And I think Ricky can say it better than us.
Ricky can say it better than us. Okay, because
everybody's blaming me. Huh?
well, at least the panel is exciting, huh? I'd have to say, all of you are quite open this morning, and I'm really enjoying it as a journalist. I have to say that. Okay, productivity, moving forward, productivity. Let me catch on that. Points that I caught earlier today. We're a consumer-driven economy. A loan portfolio won't increase unless, of course, the economy is moving. So it's like a chicken and the egg scenario. But Tony also pointed out to pay attention to productivity. And you earlier, Ricky, your first question I asked you, you said you just knew the Philippines would be harder hit because we're not really into manufacturing while other countries around us are. As a country, is it time to frankly pivot to agriculture? I'll give you an example. There was 0.5% growth, very measly, but that's the second quarter of 2020, and back now to a negative after the 3 storms. The government set aside 8 billion pesos for next year to aid the farmers. Some say that's not enough considering their loans. Tony was talking about, frankly, they are the smallest. Farmers really, you talk
Right.
about an SME, that would be them.
Likely not enough, but also it has to go hand in hand with demand increasing. You can't plant stuff that nobody's going to buy. No? So this has to be go hand in hand, and the government has to manage the timing. But the government has to stimulate this type of growth,
Yeah.
whether credit, whether by grants, whether by and the private sector has the role in this. So all these things have to go hand in hand to create the demand that will. If there's a demand, somebody's going to feel it.
Yes. So stimulate the demand. Okay, that's quite clear. But in terms of manufacturing, how to make the Philippines more resilient in the next, let's say, 10 years would to have more manufacturing in the country. Would you agree with that, Ricky?
I think that ship has pretty much sailed already.
Really?
Manufacturing capacity. Of course, we can have our day for that, but it just so happens we're hit harder in this crisis. But in previous crises, we were hit less, and likely in the next crisis, the consumers was gonna keep us surviving. So let's not use just one crisis to say we should be this, we should be that. What we should do is make sure we survive first, and then we can look back and stay and retool ourselves. But let's get over this, and everybody get back to work. Some will be there, some will not. But that's just the way it is. You know?
Maybe Karen, if I can build on what Ricky's been saying, is that okay?
Please do, sir. Please do, Jaime. Yes, please.
My philosophy, whether it's manufacturing or elsewhere, perhaps the focus of all of us, both the private and public sectors, to generate employment. Anything that helps employment at this point in time, we should all be behind. We have industries that remain fairly robust. For example, the BPO industry has been done relatively well. People haven't pulled out. The services need to continue to be needed. That's over 1 million people that are affected positively by that. They're even utilizing hotel space in Manila because they can't move around as much. That's one touch point. There are many others. Anything that encourages employment at this time, we should have more flexible employment rules. And the more employment of any kind is better than no employment at all. And that goes back, I think, to what Ricky was saying. That is one way that the private sector can continue helping on the demand side, because when people are earning, obviously they have money that they have to spend on goods and services, and it starts to get a virtuous cycle going. And one piece of advice, that whether it's manufacturing or elsewhere, Karen, all of us should do whatever we can to stimulate employment across all sectors in any way we can. And I think if the government can help us be a catalyst in making that happen, that would be great. I think one person made reference, maybe it was Tessie, to transportation, for example. Part of the reason that sometimes manufacturing concerns can't get going again is issues of transportation, what the rules and regulations are, what you're allowed to do, whether you can move from one place to another. If we can get, for example, the touch point of transportation fixed, it allows people to move again. It allows them to go to their point of work. That is a way of helping the employment side. All of us in the private sector as well should be encouraged and do whatever we can to create employment and get that going again. I think that should be a massive area of focus, both for us in the private sector. We have a responsibility there. And I think we're probably, as a community, the biggest generators of employment in the country. We should continue that. And on the government side, to facilitate anything that they can do to make that process of the employment numbers moving up become easier. And there are many touch points on that front.
Well, thank you so much. Tony, my last question for the panel, because I just have 10 minutes left, but I'll start with you. Can you share one learning moment in your CEO career during this pandemic that the participants can learn from? Whether they are an employee, an entrepreneur, a specific moment that essentially changed either your leadership style, determined the survival of your company. Something like a major aha moment, as Oprah would say. Your mic, Tony, yes.
Sorry. There isn't really one, but I mean, but what I can say to every entrepreneur out here is, number one, transparency and honesty with your staff. I think that's the most important thing throughout this COVID period. And to really build a togetherness and continue communicating so that ideas come out and we can restructure the business. Really, during COVID, when you're locked down, Zoom and the likes have been amazing for us. That aha moment of getting everyone together and being able to focus. When you're running 245 planes, you don't have time to really sit down and look at and strategize properly. And being locked down, there has been an opportunity, and we were incredibly transparent and incredibly sharing of ideas, and that's led to us now trying to build a neobank, building a very exciting logistics business, and creating a platform, an academy to rehire people. So a lot of that came from just being open and communicating and knocking down invisible walls. So there's productivity within a company and silos. We have 24,000 staff, and even though we're very, very flat structured, we all see ourselves as one big happy family. There's an incredible amount of Napoleons and silos and lack of communication. That aha moment for me actually was through Zoom calls to break down these invisible walls and say, guys, either we work together and find new ways of working together, or we're finished. So, and the very last thing to say is there's an enormous amount of assets in your company. It's your people, number one, an enormous amount of assets within the company that can be turned into new businesses. Our biggest asset was data. Our second biggest asset was our logistics. And we've combined the two and created something quite exciting: e-commerce, fintech, and logistics. So there's always a silver lining. I want to re-emphasize that. Stay positive. Filipino energy is amazing. The Filipino positivity is amazing. I'm watching all the comments coming on the chat groups, and so many ideas and farmers and all kinds of great positivity. And I think that's your biggest asset. Stay positive, stay hungry, and turn this crisis into an opportunity. It's an opportunity to leapfrog. AirAsia took over after 9/11, when there was assuming the death of air travel. And so we saw it as an opportunity. We knew air travel wouldn't disappear. And so we came out with a low-cost airline. In this crisis, we see an opportunity to take our assets, our people, to reskill into this new world. And so don't be down, be positive. You're an amazing people. And we all have to rely on government and stuff, but I think the most important advice you can give is rely on yourself. Whether it's getting a bank loan, that's a lot of third party and people will help. But the bottom line is rely on yourself and rely on your people. And it's amazing what you can do when you're positive.
That's beautiful. And I love the part where you said you needed to break down invisible walls. That's a good one, especially for any company, and many are working from home. So I've heard that it's even harder to manage people when you don't even see the nuances of body language. Tessie, I wanted to ask you, your learning moments that you can share?
I think as a leader, you have to be in front when the crisis comes, especially when it's really unexpected. And I'm happy to note that many leaders in our business units have stepped up to the front, got hold of the situations, assess, took care of the employees and engage the customer. And then after that, look inward to see how we can survive in this pandemic. I'm glad that they all step up to the front, and I think that is how we were able to at least be present early, be present in the community earlier.
And just to add, I heard from some people that you were actually going to the office. You were going to work, holding meetings, considering that you do have some leaders that, of course, COVID is a serious health issue for seniors. And I don't mean that in any negative way. I just mean it in an IATF COVID medical kind of way. But yet you were on the front line. Why was that important?
No, not all of our people are senior. And
yes, definitely, yes.
So we have a lot of younger people, maybe not the millennials, but I mean as leaders, and they step up to the front, and we really opened our office mid-April, and it was not my initiative; it was the initiative of a lot of this leaders in our business unit. So I'm pretty happy on what had happened. So we have good leaders.
So your learning moment essentially is, of course, to be on the front line. That's the one.
Yes, and not only for myself, but most of the people of the business units step up to the front, and I think I think this community way of doing things is very important. So you don't have to. It was not training. It was something that has been inherent in them, that as a leader they have to be in front, and that was good.
All right, thank you so much, Tessie. Ricky, what was your CEO learning moment that you feel either changed you as a leader, the owner of your company?
I don't know if I learned anything.
Okay, I need you to repeat that. I'm sure that you did, but okay, Ricky, that you can share with the participants.
Asian financial crisis, but to always expect the worst. Of course, you hope for the best. But what continues to amaze me is the spirit of the people, our people, most people, on how they step up in situations like this. But in the future, I'll think about, see if I learned anything from this.
Okay, but considering, I mean, as a businessman, would you say that this is the worst crisis that you've faced personally?
Well, crises get worse, and I think the Asian crisis, which was coupled with because we do a lot of business in Latin America, came almost hand in hand with the tequila crisis. I think that was the worst crisis This is a health crisis, so it's totally different. And it led to a business crisis as well. So I would say this could be so far the worst. And they seem to get worse and worse from one crisis to the next. So just the thing is to make sure, one thing everyone should learn is to be prepared for the next one. Surely there will be a next one.
Okay, so I think that...
No, but always a silver lining in every crisis.
Yes, but I think there's one important lesson that you just shared, Ricky. It's really preparation. I'd have to say preparation.
When I was very young, I read in a book, phrase by obviously a wise man, that there are no desperate situations, only desperate men. So I've always kept that in mind.
Okay, and actually that's a very good one, because it can go deeper than one thinks. There are no desperate situations, only desperate men. And if I were to continue, a lack of preparation would make for a desperate man or woman. Correct? Thank you so much, Ricky. Jaime, what are your CEO moments that you've learned during this crisis that, people can take on from something that's been life-changing to you, to Ayala Corporation? We all went through a period of self-reflection and introspection.
Yeah, I would say, Karen, of course, there are many touch points, because, there's no playbook in a situation like this. You have to use your common sense, your instincts, have far more empathy than ever before, listen a lot more carefully. and respond to that. But if I were to say the one big issue that I think has been transformative in our country is the whole concept of cooperation. All of us in the business community, for one way or another, competition is part of our lifeblood. It's the way we've been trained, and it's really in a way what adds value to the customer. We even have, of course, a competition commission to make sure that stays alive. And I think as nation states also, we tend to compete and try to build, some kind of value proposition for ourselves. I think what this crisis has shown is that we're all part of a system that's now much more integrated than ever before. Tony talked about supply chain. Tessie talked about talking with her community of MSMEs. Ricky talked about the public-private sector. This is a time, Karen, when cooperation is far more important than anything else. We all have, I don't think there's been ever a moment where I've called Tessie or Ricky or Tony that they both, all three of them, haven't responded in some positive way. This is a time when all of us have to hold hands, join forces, and contribute whatever we can in our own way to a solution. I think the amazing thing about the capitalist system, Karen, is that it's taken, over the years, over decades, many people out of poverty. It's an extraordinary system, but it's left a lot of people a little bit on the side. There have been winners, and of course, there have been plenty of losers. Our job as a community is to make sure that we leave as few losers behind as possible. In a crisis like this, there are very few tools. This is an overarching problem. It's a problem for the country. It's a problem for the world. We have to all work together. And the more communication there is between us, the more we help each other in pain points that we have, the more the private sector and the public sector work hand in hand. All of us have to jumpstart this economy together. So my big learning, Karen, which obviously I also follow through with, is the more we can cooperate to get ourselves out of this crisis, do whatever we can to be catalysts for change, is the big learning.
All right, thank you so much. And I'd have to say there's so many messages right now on our, is this a Facebook chat, Joey? But there's so many messages, and I'm sorry that I can't read your questions to our panelists, but one I've seen is they've said that this is the most exciting panel that they've seen so far, with the four of you all together in one panel. And I want to thank you for being so forthright, being so insightful, being upfront in today's panel, answering both questions, not just the concerns of the private sector, but what role the government should play as well. So before we go, I'd like to thank, of course, Jaime Augusto Zobel de Ayala, Chairman and CEO of Ayala Corporation, Enrique Razon, Chairman and CEO of ICTSI, Tessie C. Coson, Vice Chair of SM Investments, Tony Fernandez, Group CEO of Air Asia, and may we invite our speakers for a photo op, the normal way, a new normal way, which Ricky already hates the new normal term, but I think a photo op is move closer, I think. All right, so this will be in the website of Go Negosyo. So first shot will be on your, please, your brightest smile. So you need to show teeth. 3, 2, 1. Okay. The second shot is with the Go Negosyo thumbs up. And I think that's, please raise your thumbs up, both hands. Both hands, Ricky. Yes. All right. 3, wait, put it up, Ricky, there. 3, 2, 1. Okay, again, thank you so much, Jaime, Ricky, Tessie, and Tony. And may I say what an honor it's been for me. I mean this from the bottom of my heart, to be able to moderate this forum. We all want a little challenge now and then, and you were my challenge this morning. Thank you so much to the four of you. Much appreciated. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you too, Karen. It's been a pleasure.
Thank
Thank you,
Karen.
Thank you.